Hello, my name's Matt Warren. I'm the director of the RMIT University for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation, and I'm going to be presenting on fake news and disinformation during the Black Lives Matter movement case study. And this presentation is for the 9th conference of the Australian Institute of Computer Ethics. So, Black Lives Matters movement. The Black Lives Matter movement is a decentralized movement that advocates for non-violent civil disobedience in protest against police brutality. And this paper will look at the real-life examples of fake news and disinformation that occurred following the death of George Floyd in 2020. So in terms of what do we mean? So in terms of this paper, we talk about the concept of fake news and disinformation, and really what you have is sort of a situation where those terms are hard to define and can be used either way. So we have a situation where in the UK there was a UK parliamentary report into fake news and disinformation, and they came to the view that disinformation was the deliberate creation of sharing of false or manipulated information that is intended to deceive and mislead audience, either for the purposes of causing harm, political gain, personal financial gain, and misinformation refers to the inadvertent sharing of false information. So certainly with the growth of social media, we really have seen, the real life impact that the misuse of information has had, and that it's now become a global phenomenon, that is now impacting democratic political elections or over the world. This is an area outside the concept of this paper, but it's important to understand where this paper is sort of sitting in terms of this time of great change and great misuse of information. So in terms of this paper, we are focusing on social media, particularly Twitter and Twitter bots. So Twitter bots are Twitter accounts that are controlled by a third party. So a Twitter bot network in theory could be millions or could be a few compromised accounts that are being controlled. So there's a number of different Twitter bots. One is spamming, where it's just those controlled accounts on Twitter are used to generate a lot of unsolicited content. The one is fake trending topics. So what those bots do is allow it to misinterpret trends that actually aren't popular on Twitter, but because these bots are posting those hashtags, it gives the impression that certain subjects could be trending. Opinion manipulation, which is really the use of bots to misrepresent public opinion, and can be coordinated around a particular topic. And really in the context of this paper, this is what we'll really sort of talking about are these opinion manipulated bots. There's also astroturfing, which is used to mask information, and fake followers, where people can buy followers as a sort of a commodity, and all that those fake followers do is artificially inflate people's Twitter followers numbers. So in terms of the research question, what we're looking at is, were there examples of fake news or disinformation via Twitter bots during the Black Lives Movement protests? So in terms of the data collection occurred between the 2nd of June and the 8th of June 2020. The 2nd June was really, after the sad death of George Floyd, and what the paper focused on was the monitoring of stories on Twitter relating to the Black Lives Matter movement, and it took the form of monitoring social media and social media handles. And as part of this case study, 7 bots were identified that were spreading information about the Black Lives Matters movement. So in terms of these Twitter bots, in terms of the profile, before the Black Lives Movement protests, the accounts had no Twitter activity at all. The Twitter accounts had very limited Twitter engagement, and when the Twitter posts were posts, they were highly political in nature. And as I said, these fit the profile of being opinion manipulating Twitter bots. So this is an example of one of the tweets from these bots. So it's using the hashtag civil war, and it's saying if the people that are going to stop the protests are bringing guns, it's best that the protesters bring guns with them. Let's give the government something to remember. So what that virtual message is doing is, trying to incite violence in the physical world. And again, these hashtags were using a lot of these Twitter bots we use a lot of different hashtags, some of which were bona fiable, such as Black Lives Matters, BLM protest, but some of them were very political in terms of civil war or people versus government. The other content that they published was also visual content. They were posting fake images, so they weren't. So these were images that were taken from a TV show, and what they were doing were being posted as if they were fact, to imply that a physical violent act had occurred in Washington, again trying to cause incitement in the real world. So in terms of the data that was collected, the tweet data was collected, but really the bot numbers, as I said, 1 to 7, the number of tweets, the number of retweets, the number of followers and following of those bot accounts. So what did the data sort of highlight? Well, it highlighted that many of the 7 bots, some had more limited success than others. So bot number 5 only tweeted 6 tweets, but was retweeted 22 times, had an increase in their followers, and they started to follow other accounts, and that really was the most successful of the 7 tweets. Bot number 2 had 33 tweets during this period. Only one person or one other account retweeted it. They actually had a decline in their followers, and they didn't increase their following of anyone else. So what it sort of highlighted, in this sort of case study, is there was a lot of activity, but what actual impact did it have in the real world? So in terms of the overall assessment, bot number 1 and 5 were involved in extensive retweeting, so they were retweeting a lot of other tweets. Bots 2 and 7 were the ones who were doing their own tweeting of messages, and bots 4 had very limited tweets, and bots 3 and 6 had limited treats and retreats. So in terms of the overall assessment of these 7 bots in this period, there was only there were 74 treats. Those treats were retreated 48 times, and they had an increase of 15 collectively in their followers, and they increased their following by 10. So really, what it sort of highlighted with a case study is actually the profile of how an identifiable botnet would actually operate in a political environment where they're trying to cause conflict or sharing of false information. So what it sort of highlighted really that they weren't successful, that those 7 bots weren't able to engage extensively with the Twitter community to spread their false narrative. After the study, what happened was Twitter suspended 3 of the bot accounts. So Twitter had identified that they were botnets. 1 bot account deleted all their posts from the period of the study, so there's no evidence now that they were posting. Only 1 bot account is still posting fake news after the study and is still active, and 2 bot accounts is not posted since the end of the study, so they just posted for that political event and then sort of stopped. So again, it sort of highlights with botnets that they are very fluid in terms of their activities after the event. So in conclusion, the paper looked at the Black Lives Matter movement and the impact that the Twitter bots had, and as I said, this case study focused on 7 Twitter bots. So again, the impact for those 7 was minimal, but imagine that you have a botnet that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of bots, these controlled Twitter accounts. And this is where you can start to see, the impact of fake news and disinformation when it occurs at scale. Thank you for listening to my presentation.